Mr. Vai, thank you for joining me in our podcast, Rewinding from Montenegro. How are you?
Very good. Nice to be here. Thanks.
Your tour starts in March, spring tour in Europe. So many of people think that musicians' tour life is about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. How is your touring?
Can
And what
be.
you expecting? Can be,
Well, it can be. Being on tour could be about anything. It could. I mean, I've been touring for 42 years, and I've
yeah,
I've seen many different kinds of lifestyles that people lead on the road. Everything from kind of abandoning reality, you
yeah,
know, and just living a lavish lifestyle of drugs, sex, rock and roll, and getting lost in it, to people that like to go on tour because they love to travel, they like different cultures, they like meeting different people, they enjoy getting on stage and playing it, and there's everything in between.
yeah, yeah. And what you expecting from this tour, particularly in Europe?
Well, I love to tour Eastern Europe,
Yeah,
especially because there's so much culture there. There's such amazing cities and traditions and food, architecture, people. You know, if you're in school in America, in high school, or even grade school, you're taught certain things about the rest of the world. But
yeah.
until you go out into the rest of the world and see it for yourself and make your own conclusions, uh, you really don't know what's out there. I mean, when I was learning about countries like Estonia, Latvia,
Yeah,
Lithuania, Czech Republic, Turkey, all that, all the Baltics and everything, you don't really learn what it's like. You
yeah,
know, you're learning through the lens of social commentary and news, and you're not living with the people. You're not seeing how they live, how they speak, how they eat, how they work, how they create. So you create a different perspective. But I've discovered once I started going that, like the rest of the world, people just want to live a good life, have the things they need, raise their children, have playtime, have work time, have family time, and enjoy life and be creative. And that's pretty much,
yeah.
I believe, at what is the heart of people around the world. The only obstruction to that is they watch the news.
Yeah, yeah. And many of them listen to rock and roll, which is Bond.
Yes, that's true.
uh, your album, Steven Gash, came out last year. You said in an interview that's been on a shelf for 30 years. When you decided to put it out and make an homage to Gash.
Well, I actually released it this year.
Yeah.
Uh, Last year, I decided to release it.
Mm,
It's an interesting story behind this record. First of all, I always have loved recording. I like the recording
mm,
process, I like engineering, I like producing. And when I get an idea for something, I pretty much can also see how to accomplish it, you know? So when I was very young, 12, 13, 14, a teenager, I was really into the rock music of that period, like, Led Zeppelin and
yeah.
Queen and Steppenwolf and, all that kind of stuff. And I was also very much into like the motorcycle culture. I used to build mini bikes and motorbikes and all that kind of stuff. And my brother had a Harley, and I always loved the idea of having a Harley, but I had to just keep stealing his, because I couldn't afford.
Yeah.
And I liked the culture. And when I moved out to California in 1980, eventually in the mid 80s, I was able to afford a Harley, and I bought seven of them over a year's period.
Yeah.
And in the early 90s, late 80s, I started to join the biker culture
Mm,
in Southern California. It was big. And I had a friend that grew up on Long Island. His name was Johnny Sombrato, and it was Johnny Gash
Yeah.
Sombrato. And he got the, it was a very East Coast, New York biker, Italian
Mm.
kind of guy. And he got the nickname Gash because when he was 21, he had climbed these high tension wires and the electric arced and it went through his body and it fried him pretty good. And he fell 30 feet onto barbed
Oh.
wire fence and he caught fire. And 60% of his body was third degree burns and his face
Mm.
was okay. So the fact that he survived was kind of a
Yeah.
miracle.
Yeah.
And years later, he moved out to California and we started riding together. We were like best buddies. We had this great
Mm.
group of people. And we used to love riding. And we went on all these great trips. And one of the things I noticed, uh, if you ever talk to a motorcycle enthusiast, they can wax on romantically about the joys of being in the wind,
Yeah.
riding a motorcycle. It really is quite a sense of freedom.
Mm.
If it resonates with you, it's just fantastic because
Yeah.
you got this power under you and you're in control and you're out in the open and
Mm.
you're with your friends and you have your immediate environment and usually you're just on an adventure,
Mm.
and you just feel good. It's this feeling of uplifting freedom. So at one point I just got this pull to record some songs that I wanted us to be able to listen to while we were on our motorcycle rides that to me sounded like the kind of music I'd love to listen to when I was riding my motorcycles, which is very straight ahead, sort of like 70s,
Mm.
80s, kind of real straight ahead,
Yeah.
rock and roll with just good energy,
Mm.
nice melodies, and just something to enjoy, And I didn't make it a Steve Vai focus album, with
Yeah. Yeah.
long solos, and I mean I've got so much of that, I wanted this just to be pow, just like
Mm.
that. And I didn't on a lot of the rock records, excuse me, sorry, on a lot of the rock
Mm.
records that I recorded, I have a tendency in my style to even when I'm
Mm.
doing play a lot of fills
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But on this, I just wanted to, and I recorded. I did it all very quickly. I
Mm.
probably recorded all the tracks in like a week, and
Mm.
I found this fantastic female drummer from Texas, Tiffany Smith, and she just nailed these parts. And when I finished it, I needed to put vocals on it, and I didn't even know that Gash could sing.
Yeah.
I don't think he
Yeah.
knew because he never sang rock and roll. He sang like a crooner type of a Frank Sinatra voice. But I would hear something in his voice, and I said, I bet my instincts told me there was a rock and roll voice in
Mm.
there. So I took him into the studio, and this was after I tried to sing, which was a
Yeah.
disaster, because I don't have a rock and roll voice.
Mm.
I like my voice. It's very kind of
Yeah.
appropriate for certain things, but it's very limited. It's not like Gash. I got him in the studio and he started singing, and I just could not believe what was coming out of his
Mm.
mouth. I mean, it was
Yeah.
powerful and it was confident and it was authentic sounding, and it even had a humorous side,
Mhm.
And then I
Yeah.
realized all of these things because that's who he was. You had to
Right.
know the guy. I mean, he was intense. Gash was just fucking intense. He was so funny, so crazy, so lovable, endearing, totally unpredictable. I mean, you had no idea what he was going to say, and you were always stunned when he said it. But you loved him for it. It's hard. He's hard to
Mm.
explain.
Yeah.
But um, I've worked with a lot of great lead singers, and at the time that I recorded Johnny Gash, I had worked with, well, Zappa,
Mm.
Alcatraz, Graham Bonnet,
Yeah, yeah.
David Lee Roth, David
David,
Coverdale, Ozzy, Lemmy. I mean, I worked with
yeah,
so many guys.
he reminded me of Ozzy in the moments. Gash.
Yeah, when I was recording Gash, my ear didn't reflect on him sounding like anybody. It wasn't until
Yeah.
later that I thought, oh, somebody said he sounds like Graham Bonnet. And I said, oh, yeah, he's got a little bit of Graham Bonnet. And then, oh, it's like David. Yeah. Well, this was all the stuff that
Yeah,
we, you
yeah.
know. So, but he's Gash. I mean, if he came out before those guys, he would not sound any different. And you'd be comparing them to him.
Yeah, yeah, right.
And because
Eh,
he had it, he had that thing.
right. Yeah.
I mean, there's a big difference between a really good singer and a rock star.
Mm.
There's a DNA in there, and a lot of times those two don't meet. You have
Yeah.
people that are great rock star frontmen, but they may not sing very well, and then you got guys that could sing really well, but you don't really
Mm.
care because then they don't have any charisma. Gash had both. He had a great singing voice, and he had a tremendous amount of charisma.
Mm.
So I recorded these songs, and they were more like demos, And I figured, and we had them, and we were riding, and I had stopped everything I was doing to record that stuff. And then I had to go back, and I was working on Sex and Religion, and I had
Mm.
some other contractual obligations. And my plan was to go back and flesh out a few more songs because I only had 8 songs recorded. One of them I wrote with Nikki Sixx.
Mm.
But yeah, and I wanted to tweak. There's certain things I wanted to tweak, fix,
Yeah.
whatever. But Gash was killed in a motorcycle accident
Yeah, yeah,
in the late '90s, and I was just so distraught by this. I just took the whole project and put it on the shelf for 30 years.
yeah.
And I would listen to it occasionally, especially around the anniversary of his death. And I always liked it. It just always brought me back to a special time, a special feeling, because the record just makes me feel good,
Yeah.
It makes me feel empowered, and that's what it was meant for. And it reminds me of him, and we all loved him so much.
Yeah.
And so finally I started feeling, well, I should put this out at some point. And now it's out.
Yeah, it's a beautiful album, really. The
Thank
songs
you.
are just great. As we speak about recordings, I always wanted to ask a guitar virtuoso how not to focus on guitar only when you're recording.
How not
How
to
you
what else do you want to focus on?
drums, bass, other
Oh, what you're
instruments.
producing.
Yeah,
Oh, well,
because every guitarist wants to feel this guitar. How you making that big picture? How the album should sound?
well, I'll tell you how. You have to imagine what you want it to sound like.
Mm.
That's it. You have to listen to. You can't say how, because how is different than what you want it to sound like. So
Mm.
first, you have to have an idea of what you want it to sound like, or else you're just spinning knobs.
Mm.
So when I listen to a song, and the song could be, something chords and a
Yeah,
vocal that
yeah.
from my iTunes, my iPhone, I mean, it could be just something really simple. Okay, well, when I wrote this one, hang on. I sang. Ba, 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 ba. So it was just a melody with
Mm.
a guitar on a cassette.
Mm.
So then you listen to it you picture it, you imagine it in another dimension. In a
Mm.
sound, how do you want it to sound? So with a song like that, For the Love of God, All I had was that what I showed you, but I could hear what I wanted it to sound like. I
Mm.
mean, I didn't know how, but
Yeah.
I knew what.
Mm.
So then once you know what you want it to sound like, then you start doing things like I wanted a solo section that was just going to start to soar. I wanted very simple bass, and I didn't want anything to get in the way of the melody. And I
Mm.
wanted the melody to be a melody the whole way through, you know? So
Yeah.
these are things you paint a picture. And then if you have no idea how to start to build it, you find somebody that does.
Mm.
You
Mm.
find somebody that knows how to do
Yeah.
that, and you work with them, and they're teaching you, and you're teaching them. You're both learning and teaching. So if you have no idea, it's good to work with people who are really good.
Mm.
You could
Mm.
read, learn on the internet and all this stuff, but you got to just
Yeah.
do it. So
Yeah.
just do it. Here's
Yeah.
another answer. Just do it. Just
Right.
start. Don't ask
Right.
questions. Just
Mm.
start and just do it. It's within you.
Mm.
That I can assure you.
Because in many situations in studio, when the band comes after recording, the drummer says, "Oh, I could use just a little more volume on drums." The guitarist says, "I would use just a little more of guitar." So that's why I ask you how you not
Well,
focus only on your instrument to have feeling about another guy who is playing with you. I think that's very important also on live show to
well,
listen to everyone.
yeah. There's a difference between being the guitar player in the band and being the producer.
Yeah, yeah, of
The
course.
producer is the one that listens with unbiased, unprejudiced
Mm,
ears. And they say, well, we could use a little more of this, a little bit of that, and then he'll present it to the band, and you can get feedback. But
yeah.
it's there's no real rules. You can have the guitars louder or softer. Like the Gash record, I wanted the record to sound big, and one of
Mm,
the ways to do that is you tuck the vocal back a little bit, and you make the guitars right up there, so you can still hear it. But once you start taking the lead instrument or vocal and you start putting it louder and louder, the track starts sounding smaller and smaller.
mm,
So I
yeah,
wanted that to sound big. So
yeah.
I was listening as a producer.
Mm, right.
So the band politics can be the devil.
Yeah, egos.
Yeah, egos, because you've got people that just, they think they should be louder.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That good luck with that. It's
Yeah.
always helpful to have a respected leader.
Mm,
Somebody that's benevolent enough so that if they make a suggestion, you take it seriously because they're probably right.
mm,
But if that band leader is the drummer and he's got a ego, then you're going to end up with a
yeah,
lot of drums.
yeah.
Picture
And
Metallica.
yeah, yeah. And there's been a lot of argument which sound
Now, I don't
is
mean to
better
diss.
to.
I don't mean to
Yeah,
diss the drummer from
of course,
Metallica.
of course, yeah,
Brilliant, a great player, but the
of course, yeah, yeah.
leader in the band.
Uh, a lot of arguments about vinyl and CD compressed sounds. Do you think that digital sound is better than it was on uh, analog recordings?
Well, it's a matter of taste.
Mm,
First of all, when digital first came out, they had to take analog and convert it into digital. And the converters they were using and the kinds of digital uh, uh, formatting they were using, it was not great, you know. So as the years went by, digital has improved quite a bit. It's cleaner. It's
mm,
there's less noise. But with analog, it's a whole different kind of way of capturing sound. It's on magnetic tape, and there's a noise floor which actually adds to the warmth. And then there's what analog does to the body of the frequencies and also the high end and the bottom end is more, it's friendlier
Mm.
than digital, but it's noisier too. And it can, the way that analog compresses is very warm, and even the way analog uh, peaks, the peaking is not the peaking distorts, but
Mm.
not the way digital peaking. Digital peaking
Yeah.
distorts in a way that you don't want.
Mm.
You know, it hurts. It's not fun. It's click click click. You know, like
Yeah.
knives in your ear. Whereas analog peaking is kind of like it's just a warm kind of distortion. So it's really a matter of taste. With this Gash record, everything was recorded analog. When I recorded it,
Mm.
there was no such thing as digital.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there didn't exist. I don't believe, so I wanted to retain the integrity of the analog. So we mixed it. We mixed it both to digital and analog. And with the analog 2-track master, we made the vinyl. And with the digital, we made the
Mm.
digital. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely, when I listen, there's a big difference to my ear.
Mm.
Big difference.
Mm. It
I
almost
much prefer
becoming
the
a
analog.
generation thing.
Yeah.
Older guys loves vinyls, and today kids loves
Yeah.
digital.
Well,
Uh,
it's funny because one time I wanted to turn my kids on to analog, and I broke out my record player and I brought all my favorite, analog records from the 70s, and I played it for
wow.
them, and they just said, it sounds old. Like, yeah, because I'm
Yeah,
old.
yeah.
I'm not
Old,
17.
yeah, old but gold.
Old but gold. I like that.
uh, what musicians need to have to play with you? What kind of type of people and musicians you're looking for?
Well, I've looked for different things in musicians through the years. My uh, level of acceptance of what was more important has changed through the years. Right now, what I look for in a musician is, first of all, they got to be fun people.
Mm.
They got to be kind of like happy people. I've toured with people that are unhappy,
Mm.
unconscious, victim mentalities, and I just won't. I can't do it anymore. I won't do it.
Yeah.
Because it can destroy a whole tour, the atmosphere of a whole tour. And I love touring. I love being out there, and it's fun. You can have a lot of fun, and when you have the right people. So that's first and foremost. And then, of course, they have to be able to do something extraordinary on their instrument. They have to be able to deliver musically. And I have to feel as though they at least like the music. They don't have to love it, but they should at least like it.
Mm.
Because I've had great musicians in the band that don't like the music. Not the
Yeah.
music,
Yeah.
music, But so I like when they can play really well. They have to be able to play really well, and having a good sense of humor is nice.
Yeah. Uh, you had a lot of correlations, and you play with a lot of bands and musicians, but one is particularly interesting for me. That's John Lydon. The two, like the journalist says, how to unlikely partnership forged one of the most unforgettable art rock hits of the 80s. How that happened, and also Ginger Baker was one of the drummer.
Yeah, that was an extraordinary project. I so enjoyed that. It was very easy for me because I didn't have to write the music. I didn't have to do anything except show up and play. And they had recorded the record, and Bill Laswell was producing
Mm.
it. And Bill had a vision for Lydon, and it was a really cool vision. It was very musical for Lydon. It had like African cultural African kind of beats, and which was
Yeah.
so cool. And but it was melodic, but putting Lydon on top of it was just such a money punch. I mean, it created such a
Mm.
different. And they had a guitar player, Nicky Scopolidis, who was a great guitar player, and he did some of the rhythm stuff. But um, I got a call from my friend who was friends with Bill Laswell, and he said, "You want to come down and put the guitars on this record?" And I said, "Yeah."
Mm.
So I was actually on tour with Alcatraz at the time, and I did everything in like 2 1/2 days. I flew into New York, Electric Ladyland, recorded like half the songs, and then a week, something like I can't really remember, but then
Mm.
I had to
Mm.
go back. But yeah, it was really a great project.
Because it's, uh, I think fans, yours and him, are really surprised that you worked together, especially in those years when punk was pretty much against the all corporate bands. So
Well,
that's really,
Lydon's a lot smarter than that stupid shit.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's not gonna. He's an artist, he's not going to compromise his work because of somebody else's idea of who should be
Yeah.
right, and because of the color of their tattoos or something. I don't
Mm.
know. you know uh, Look, I can deliver certain things on the guitar, and if it's suitable for a project, if the artist is wise, they're going to embrace it, and that's what he did. But yeah, I know, I understand what you're saying, though. It's
Yeah,
very odd that you get a guy like Steve Vai with long hair and
yeah,
80s shred playing with the king of the punk culture.
yeah.
But that's what
But
makes an artist an
yeah,
artist.
yeah, yeah. Both of you, and you made a really great song that stays evergreen, I think. And my last question would be: in one of the interviews, you said, "My life isn't guitar. Life is bigger than that." Uh, what is beyond guitar? Is what is your life? The
My
family,
life
of
is
course, but
No, my life is the same as yours.
mm,
It's about finding out who you are, and I'm not referring to your name,
yeah,
occupation, your past, the stories in the head, to find out actually who you are. Because in that, when you discover that, you free yourself from stress, you free yourself from ignorance, and you can discover your authentic personality. Your authentic personality is a joyful one. It's creative. It has clarity. It has access to wisdom. It doesn't allow the insanity of the world to take its power away. So life itself is, life itself is what you are.
yeah,
You don't have a life. You are life. So when you know that, then the life you're leading is empowered,
mm,
and all the things that you do in your life, there's an appreciation for. There's a joy in doing them. So part of that for me is playing guitar. It's a big part of the joy of my life, but it's not everything.
yeah. Yeah, Mr. White, thank you very much for this opportunity. It's really great to talk to you. I wish you good health. That's first, and I want to see you in good show in Belgrade in March.
All right. We'll see you there, Nevo. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much. Cheers.